everyone. I have Ashley here with me. Ashley is an associate marriage and family therapist. I also know her, so this conversation is going to be a lot fun and easier for me. Is there anything you want to add, Ashley? And welcome.
Yeah, hi. Good to see you. Glad to be here. Yeah, I just finished grad school earlier this year in June. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist. I met Nyata at the Center for Professional Counseling, and I'm currently there and at this place called the Center for Neuroskills, where we work with clients that have experienced traumatic brain injury. So it's kind of like a combo of theory that we learn from school and practice in session mixed with a lot of neuro information, which has been new for me. It makes it interesting. And I also am really interested in internal family systems, and just recently applied to a level 1 training at the institute that they have for IFS, and am waiting to hear if they will choose me to do my training.
Yeah. That's always the difficult part, waiting. So I
Yeah.
know this always happens, right? Like before we started recording, we were talking, and then like that's when like the most interesting stuff comes out always.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, look, I have to start recording. Are you ready? And so that's what we did. So Ashley, we were talking about making mistakes, and that's the most human conversation that we could have, right? In this space, like we're both training to be therapists, and this idea of like you have to be perfect, you cannot be a human being. I don't know, it's ingrained in everybody, but even I think more so in us, maybe, right, as therapists
Oh,
and
yeah.
wanting to be therapists.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that? Like,
Sure. Yeah. So what came up for me when we started to go into this was the idea of like a free flowing conversation, which, as you just stated, makes it a little bit easier and interesting to be able to kind of volley the ball back and forth and engage in conversation. But the idea of perfectionism, and when you had mentioned like, this is human, it's okay, it's okay for people to see us as human beings. One, even for myself, when I started working with a therapist many, many moons ago, I think it was hard for me to understand, we have this expectation of therapists are maybe like these perfect people, and they don't make mistakes, or they're, superhuman. But the reality is, I'm telling you as an associate marriage and family therapist, that is incorrect. And the second thing that came up for me is that I think I become, when there's an audience or someone watching or listening, and it's more than one person, I become a little bit more nervous, anxious, or inside myself. And I think it creates difficulty to have, you know, an easygoing conversation at times, because I think there's some part of me somewhere that it's a wound from probably childhood or something like that. Not to say I'm blaming my parents or anything like that for it, but there's definitely a fear of being seen as a human being at times. And I think the story, which could be a part of myself, right? Because this could lead way into like internal family systems too, is that part of me, the story is, I don't want to be seen as stupid or something like that. Which,
yeah.
So, it's not that, I don't know, I kind of feel stuck in that spot.
No, I think I get
That's,
it. Yeah, and I get it. It's not wanting to be seen for yourself, right? And I don't know, and I know you spoke of having a wound and not wanting to blame your parents. And that's where, like, this is what I say to my clients too, right? When I talk to them about their past, like, we all have a past. Just because we're talking about it in order to understand it, it doesn't mean we're blaming anybody, right?
Right.
It can be
Exactly.
both. It's not one or the other. It's never one or the other. And that's a whole point of psychology, though. That's the whole point of therapy, is that the to be able to hold space for two seemingly conflicting emotions, right? Right? Okay, I'm unpacking all these things about my childhood. It's bringing up anger, but at the same time, I'm not blaming anybody. I understand that my parents did the best they could. It's okay to hold space for both of those emotions. It's possible to do both of those, right? But
Yeah.
when we're talking about childhood wounds, we all have them. And I think that's what life is. We come here to learn certain things, to like literally learn lessons, and we're all overcoming something, right? Like, I don't know if you'll ever meet somebody who's like, yeah, I don't have anything from my childhood that I'm working through. And just because your parents were there in your childhood doesn't mean they're to blame, right? It's just that we all
Yeah.
have things to work through in our from our childhood. And so you're talking about not wanting to be seen, and and I wonder if that's not wanting to be seen for yourself, and I don't know if you're going to go into parts work, if that's part of like IFS, and how much of it is we are neglecting a part of ourselves that we think is bad, right?
That's
That
exactly.
unconsciously we think is bad, but it's really not. It's neither good, neither bad. It's kind of neutral. It is what it is, right? It's not bad, not good, but something we have labeled as bad.
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely where I think the incongruence comes in, which is like the confliction,
Mm,
the internal conflict that we experience. So, a
yeah.
couple words you said that just resonated with the IFS and just with myself, is compassion, feeling seen, and I think the underlying idea of IFS is basically, how do we learn and give ourselves compassion towards all of the parts of self, so that we can live a more aligned and authentic version of who we are.
Mm,
Something Richard Schwartz said, as I was watching a video the other day of him. That's the guy who basically like the creator of the theory of
mm,
IFS. He said once that he had met the Dalai Lama, and that the Dalai Lama said, I wrote it down. You ask people to go with external enemies and give them compassion. So why can't you do that internally with yourself? And so to me, that's like the biggest chunk um, of the IFS concept. And when I talk
mm,
about parts, there is a basic skeleton of parts that they kind of lay out and describe, that I think are general enough that they're universal, meaning that many people can relate to these different parts. But I also think just in having applied it and sat and utilized it in session with other people, that there are also parts that are not maybe on the list that you see
mm,
IFS has created. And that's
mm,
completely okay, because the idea of this is that it's whatever language speaks to you and how
mm,
you can better get to understand yourself. So, some of those parts, if I were to name a couple of them, there's protector parts,
mm,
there's manager parts, there's vulnerable or child parts.
mm,
Firefighters are, developed in response to conflict or emotional pain. So they
mm,
basically distract or keep us away from the things we don't want to feel or experience
mm,
in our body. Um, I'm a big family systems person, which is
Mm,
separate theory than IFS. But I think that actually, and I'm pretty sure Richard Schwartz says the same thing, that that was his
mm,
background as well. So when you think of Bowen family systems, you
mm,
think of parts as the family system, like a family, think of like a family tree, or a
mm,
genogram where there's like your grandparents, your parents, your siblings, and each person within that system has their own role or part. But internal family systems, think of all of those relatives in a sense, or parts living inside of yourself. And how do we
mm.
get to be at peace completely with who we are, or not completely? I mean, and it doesn't happen in
Yeah.
one session, it takes time, you know?
Yeah, right. So pretty much it's okay, like if you think of like, right, you're a person, you have a family, you have a mom, you have a dad, you have a brother, and you have a sibling, right? But internally you have a family within. And
Yep,
this family is, you can call them, and I wonder if you can like go over this again on what each one means. I know you explained the firefighter one. So there's the
sure.
protector, right? Or
Yep. So the protector is there basically to keep the parts safe.
mm-hmm.
Typically, the protector tries to keep the vulnerable part safe,
Mm-hmm.
and or the exile. The exile, as we were talking about wounds when we first started chatting,
Mm-hmm.
usually comes in when there's a part of you or a younger version of yourself, and it can happen throughout time. But when I've done this work, I've mostly come in contact with it's like younger part of me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that you've experienced something traumatic, you've
Mm-hmm.
experienced something that, maybe created a sense of rejection within yourself. Whatever it is, it's created a sensation that was so unbearable that you want to exile your system, meaning you want to,
Mm-hmm.
um, well, here, let me explain it this way. Richard Schwartz names it as, um, you have this experience, and these parts are naturally, they've naturally been there from birth.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have the experience, what happens is it changes the trajectory of where these parts are supposed to go and how they're supposed to be. And so that creates the confusion internally and the struggle in itself. So, to when you get in contact with a protector or an exile or a
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable part,
Mm-hmm.
self, which is your genuine self, he says with a capital S,
Mm-hmm.
um, turns to face those parts of you,
Mm-hmm.
and understand more clearly what their original path or trajectory was,
Mm-hmm.
and try to heal with compassion, understanding, empathy towards the
Mm-hmm.
part,
Mm-hmm.
to then get them back on track to their true version and path in which they were supposed to originally have been going.
Mm-hmm.
So with protectors, that's keeping vulnerable part safe or exile part safe.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes in this work, what will happen is you'll go into the session and you'll turn inward and you'll come up against a protector. And
Mm-hmm.
if you sit long enough with it and you work long enough with it and you communicate with it from self,
Mm-hmm.
you're literally facing it. I envision it that this is happening in my mind. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
actually, I'm having like a conversation with these parts. Self
Mm-hmm.
is, and then I'm talking to one of my protectors. Ask it to step back. Ask it to, you can be a part of this. You don't have to leave, but I need you to create some space right now so that I can go a little deeper, because what is that you're protecting? What's on
Right.
the other side of this wall?
Mm-hmm. So a protector would, what are some of the things a protector does? Like the part of you, right? Like is it,
Yeah.
what are some of the traits? Like is it hiding? That's when you know my protector is at play, and yourself, capital S, can go check in with that protector side, right? Is it like you're hiding, you're afraid to show yourself, or you're in a sense like protecting yourself from a situation that
Yes.
doesn't seem very threatening or it's in a situation that might actually be beneficial for you. Is that right?
Correct. It can be any of those things. I think that's why it's so important to it's an individualized treatment, meaning it can feel like a
Mm-hmm.
different sensation, thought, or emotion um, per each person. But when I think of a protector, and I ask it to kind of step out of the way or give some space so that it doesn't have to come in and
Mm-hmm.
guard. It's guarding something,
Yeah.
and it actually allows for that. It typically what I come in contact with is a much more vulnerable part of myself or a part of me that has felt it cannot exist within my system. So I've neglected
Mm-hmm.
this part of me for a very, very long time. And all of these parts have needs. And so I haven't been meeting the needs
Mm-hmm.
of whatever that part has been asking. And it might have been
Mm-hmm.
screaming. You know what I mean? It might have been for a long time like, hey, look over here, look over here. Whatever the need may be. It could be anything. It could just be a hug. You know what I mean? It could be something so simple. I've had parts, you know, uh, exile parts say, I just wanted to play. Can someone just play with me? I just want to play by the water. Or I need a hug. Or can you tell me it's going to be okay? And I think the thing that's really cool about this is that we are our own resource. We are our own well of wealth. Like we have everything we need inside of us to basically be able to reach those parts and meet the needs within
Mm-hmm.
us, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does. So can I share? I want to wrap my head around this more. The exiled part of me might be that I think that I can't be myself. I can't show myself, right? And that's how people develop personas. Um, for me, yeah, like I could safely say that I've had that. I've felt that, oh, I can't quite be myself. Being myself gets me rejected. Now there have, of course, like there have been like life events that have solidified this belief. Whether it was, like when I was little, in my culture, all you have to do is be good at school. That's all you have to do. You don't have to do chores at home. You don't have to be good at sports. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be good at school. And I was not good at school. I don't know why. I just did not like school and I was not good at it. And I always felt like I didn't fit in because of that, right? The kids who were, and we were ranked, like growing up in Nepal, we were ranked. All the kids in my class,
Mm,
like we were ranked from number one to like 30. And I was always like towards the end, I was like 30 something. And I think a part of me, yes, of course, like felt like I didn't belong and that I wasn't good enough, right? And my family moved to the United States when I was 12 years old.
mhm.
So, as you know, what happens at 12, according to Eric Erickson's theory,
Yeah.
that's when you are actually finding your identity, looking around you, not just towards your family and yourself, but looking around you to find out who you are. And that was very confusing for me, right? Moving to a completely new country with a new culture, new language at the age of 12, and now figuring out, dude, where do I fit in, right? And it definitely wasn't within my culture because everything that my culture valued, I didn't have. My culture just valued kids who were really good at school, kids who leaned towards science and math, and I was just like a really artsy kid. I like started taking drama, and I was like, oh my god, I belong. And it definitely didn't belong within my culture, within my family, and definitely didn't quite belong in this new world either. So there have been a few, like instances, yeah, that have solidified this belief that, okay, shoot, you can't be yourself. You can't show yourself. Showing yourself gets you rejected. So develop this persona, right? And I have now, at this age in my 30s, now I have begun to understand it is okay to be myself. But you're right. You're right. When I first started feeling that, it was a little unsettling, right? Because I believe that thought, that feeling of accepting that exiled part of me, it didn't belong within my system, right? And so I think that's why it's internally a little frightening when you start claiming these parts of you that and then inviting it back in or paying attention to it, right? It's a little unsettling. So can you talk a little bit about how do you move through that?
Thanks for sharing that too, by the way. Yeah, so something you said, inviting them back in. So the thing is, they're always in there.
Mm,
It's just a matter of how much we want to interact with them. But we may not know that they're there because, like, when you're describing that part of yourself at that 12 years old, and it could have happened a little sooner as well. I'm sure there's plenty of things, but to me, I hear that you froze that part of you that might be exiled, froze in time. So there's a part of you living inside of yourself that's 12 years old that feels like it doesn't belong, right? And so that actually shapes the way that you move about the world. And so I would ask, because this is, I feel like IFS is super experiential, so
mm-hmm,
it's easier when you're in practice as
mm-hmm.
opposed to like theorizing it and kind of,
Yeah.
talking about it academically.
Mm-hmm,
But I would ask, if you were to turn inward to that part,
mm-hmm.
um, can you ask it what it needs? Can you
Mm.
access that part of you? Can you see her, or is it her? It could be anything. You know what I mean? You get to name it.
Mm-hmm. As something came up immediately the minute you asked me that question, it was to be seen. And
Yeah.
I think without knowing, right, without knowing I was what I was doing, this is the self work I've been doing for the past couple of years. And yeah, and I think I can pretty much very easily tap into these parts of me, and and I think yeah, that's just the self work that I've been doing, and it's to be seen. That's the answer, and that part of me is more seen now, right? And if I am who I am today, it's because of this work I've done. If
Mm-hmm.
I because a person that I was a couple of years ago, that's not who I am today. I don't know if anybody who knew me before, and I know we met about a year ago, so you've known this like I think like this new
Yeah.
version of me, right? But the person who kind of lived in shame, that's what I would say, right? Shame of
Oh yeah.
self,
Mm-hmm.
shame of so many parts of herself, that's not me anymore, but that doesn't mean the work isn't there. The work is ongoing. The work is forever. But I think I am able to tap into these parts because they're there. And you're right, it didn't for me when I was doing this work, it never felt like I was inviting something in foreign, right? When you say inviting it, it means something you're inviting something in foreign or something that hasn't been within you. It just
Mm-hmm.
literally felt like I was just tapping into it. It's like, hey, you're there. I didn't know. Hey, hello. What's up? What do you
Yeah.
need? And
Yep.
yeah, to answer your question, it's to be seen. And I think I've honored that. That's the thing, though. I have honored that. I've allowed myself to be seen just the way I am and not as a persona and not as a this is going to get me validated, this is going to get me approval, and this is what how other people want to see me, right? Creating a version of what you think other people want to see you as, what you think might be validated or met with approval and not rejection. That's just, I'm sorry, that's just a lot of mental fuck, right? That's just like,
Yes. Yeah.
that's just what it
So
is.
yeah. So actually, as I hear you talking right now, I thought about for a second when I sit, because my therapist is IFS oriented, and so oftentimes we do very little
Mm,
talking It's more like I'm literally in my body the entire time holding space for whatever part is expressing itself to me during that 50 minutes or hour. But when you're talking, I'm hearing it's a protector as well. So there's acceptance and there's compassion.
Mm,
And even right now, you're
mm,
allowing yourself to be seen. This is a big
mm,
deal that this, you have this podcast and,
yeah.
so you're meeting the need of one of your parts, even just in this action right now.
Mm,
But more or
mm,
less, I would say also the to be seen part is another thing that I've heard Richard Schwartz
mm,
say a lot as like the medicine or the
mm,
solution without using those words.
mm,
He doesn't use that
mm,
terminology to what, healing the wounds that these parts have experienced. But
mm,
when we're talking and we're explaining, um, I've done this and it's gotten me to here and it's made me feel this way and that's actually a
mm,
protector part that's keeping you from full. And
mm,
I'm not saying you haven't ever accessed the part. It seems like you have. And I
mm,
understand for the sake of what we're doing right now, we're having a conversation. But if we were to be doing this in
mm,
practice, it would be less of I went here to A, B, C, D, and E, and I got to Z. It would be more like
mm,
literally
mm,
you inside yourself and this whatever
mm,
part self is talking to and trying to access what's coming up for you.
mm,
If we go back to the 12-year-old example, that person could be standing there. We would explore how that conversation would be going, what you would be feeling in that moment. Do they even
mm,
notice that you're there?
mm,
And then I've had this happen too, where I'm like, I want to explain it. Well, I don't really want to talk
mm,
to them because they did this. And then when I did this, it went here and we went like, and then my therapist is like, okay, well, actually, that's a protector and they're preventing you from
mm,
continuing to hold space for whatever this other
mm,
part is that we were originally talking to. So can you ask this
mm,
part, this protector part, to give you some space? And then you have a conversation with that part and you ask, check in
mm,
with them. How do you feel about this, that, and the other? And it's, for me, it ends up becoming basically like a sensation, where I'm
mm,
actually, when I access, like I can, for the most part, I think I get to an exile, but there's a lot of protectors. I mean, they will fly in any shape
mm,
or form they need to prevent you from actually connecting with the part of you that's screaming,
mm.
notice me, because they want to feel seen. I think it's beautiful that you know that about yourself. That's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. So your is any form of explanation is still your protector at play. Is that what you're saying?
That's how I've experienced
Like
it.
if you,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because we
Like
want
if
a
you feel the
logic.
need to,
Does that make sense? We want to logic our way through
yeah.
something, but I think a big issue in society is that the head and the body, the mind and the body, they're not connected. And so when we're
Mm-hmm.
here, which is I also want to say we want to honor our protectors as well. We want to honor all of our parts because they've all been there to help
Mm-hmm.
us get to the place that we're currently at. So to
Mm-hmm.
not um say that piece of me that's the protector part is bad. The firefighter is not bad. They're just kind of
Mm-hmm.
doing their job. This is what they've been trained to think that they need to do over a prolonged period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what this makes me think of? The whole like explaining is could be your protector part being at play. It makes me think of a lot of people who want to help, right? But who try to help before understanding something completely themselves, right? Before embodying something completely themselves. And we're talking about something very like this might or might not make sense, but when you it's almost bypassing something, right? Like this experience of transformation, I guess, or right, this experience of getting in touch with us part of yourself that needs to be completed, and it is something to be felt, not to be explained. But if you jump to explaining before that process is completely finished, that's the protector at play, because maybe the protector wants to get validation for, look how much I know, right? Look what I can share. Look how I can help you, right? And I'm not saying that was what was going on with me or that was my intention, but
Sure.
that, because I'm not sure, honestly. It could have just been me trying to make sense of like, oh, maybe is this what this concept is? But I get that. I get it. I get this part that we might sometimes jump into the explaining, the let me share now, let me make sense of this, let me be logical. This is either going to help someone else, or it's going to put this thing that's happening, this experiential thing that's happening, into theory so people can understand it, right? But you can't bypass the actual completion of the process. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's a wonderful way to describe it. I would say 100%. Yes. And that is why I mentioned that it is an experiential modality or
Yeah,
theory or intervention, whatever you want to call it, okay?
yeah.
Because I think it's all those things. But I also think to emphasize and highlight the word embodied or
Mm,
embodiment. Again, mind to body disconnect. We're walking
mm,
around with like a floating head trying to logic our way through life, but
mm,
unless we have that feel sense,
mm,
somatically, embodiment, it's going to be
mm.
very difficult to have a greater understanding of who we are.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And
go
I
ahead.
think that's like us, like almost like going against our human instinct, right? Because listen, when you learn something, when you learn about something that works or that's helped you, the first thing you want to do is go tell other people, right? It's like, hey, listen, this happened and it worked, and this is what happened, and that's like, yeah, like then you're being logical, right? You're going and sharing. But I totally understand what you're saying, that sharing, being logical and putting it into words and talking might actually not be beneficial, might actually even backfire, might actually even halt your healing process, right? Uh, and I know also in the beginning we were talking about, I was sharing how I'm in a phase in my life where I really don't have that many friends. I have friends, but I've also been going inward within myself, and I wonder if that's what I'm doing. If I'm unconsciously, right, without knowing what I'm doing, letting this thing that's happening solidify without needing to talk about it, without needing to share what's happening, without needing to intellectualize it, right? And I've also learned to like talk less, analyze less. I used to journal for hours, and
Mm.
if I could just like talk about something, logically explain something, right? Like, okay, this is how it went from point A to B. This is how change can happen. Then I would do that, right? I would logically make sense of it. But I wonder if that's what I've been going through by just going inward a little bit, by having more time with myself, not analyzing, not logically explaining, but just feeling this. And you're right, it's a very unspoken thing. It is something you just internally feel. And I think
Yep.
you get this, you get it. If not, it might sound like, what are these girls talking about? But I think it's one of those things. If it clicks, it resonates. That's it. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to go tell somebody about it. Right? Just let it churn within. Let
Oh,
it
yeah.
do the work.
Yes. And, okay, so a couple things you just said. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it sounds like you're in process. So when I think of this work, I think of process work. Okay, there's less context. We're less heady and
Mm-hmm.
surface. We're diving deeper. I want to get to the meat. I want to get
Yeah.
to the origin. And that's not to say anything against psychodynamic or any of the other modalities and theories. I think there's importance in everything, and it just depends on the
Mm,
person you're sitting in front of. But it really sounds like you're in process. So you're really
mm,
processing and understanding, right? It's more of an internal experience as opposed to needing to put it out there in another way or pull things in to make sense of who you are. You're just staying with
yeah.
self. You're holding space for
Mm,
that. And that's a big deal. Um, the other thing is, too, that, again, I want to emphasize it's okay to logic. It's okay
mm,
to, try to make sense of and figure out, the meaning of life or whatever you want to call it.
mm,
Because again, this is about accepting all of who we are.
mm,
And all of who we are, if you look at all the parts, the
mm,
logic part or protector, whatever you decide to name it,
mm,
is and has been working this way for a very long time and has helped
mm,
you to find and get you to the place where you're currently at, which feels like it's a much safer, more comfortable place for you.
yeah.
So to also express gratitude, to that part of you that, oh, hey, wow, look at all these years of me, because I've done the same thing. I want to talk it. I had talk therapy for 1,000 years, and it was fine. It
Mm,
was helpful. It got me, to another part of me, helped me to get to where I'm at now. I still do it.
mm,
It's gonna come up, and I think
yeah.
the work is also just recognizing, hey, okay, this part of me is kicked up right now, so hey, have a little discussion with it. Hey, what are you needing right now? You know what I mean? Is there something
Yeah.
else going on? And if there is, can you give me some space so I can go one step further and see what else is there? Because
Mm,
that's where
yeah.
the answer is. We're an infinite well of wealth. I really think
Yeah.
that the solution is within our own system.
Yeah. I think I can also share that with the protector side, I've learned to ask for the intention, right? The
Hmm.
intention behind why I'm doing something,
Yeah.
why I might be sharing something, why, yeah, like certain things I've done in my life, yes, to absolutely to seek validation, to feel like somebody because I felt like a nobody, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that that's just like what I've learned to ask for the intention, and if the intention is anything other than if the intention has nothing to do with me and what I want to express, and it has something to do with how I'm perceived by other people, then I'm much more careful with that, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
It makes sense. So what I'm hearing basically is the idea of a part of you that might be an adult part that wants to reparent or relearn a different way of being so that you can take action that's authentically aligned with
Mm-hmm.
self and who Nyata is and what Nyata needs. Which is it's a difficult
Mm-hmm.
process, but that's what I mean. You're in process. Like you're physically doing the things, feeling yourself
Yeah.
walk through them, and then deciding if you need to change and make something different for yourself. And I think also it's really wonderful that
Right.
you want to ask why. You're asking for intent. So, this is something I learned
Mm-hmm.
when I was in 12 step, where you want to do that for the betterment of self. You want to be the good parent to the
Mm-hmm.
child or children inside of you. Um, you're pausing. And I think there's an acronym, but I don't know what it is right now that pause stands for. But I think with pause comes a lot of grace as well. So that's what it sounds like you're doing.
Thank you. It definitely does not feel graceful at times. I'm on my couch, like, what is going
Sure.
on? But it's okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm in this profession for a reason. I got into this profession for just. It's okay. It's okay to accept yourself. It's okay to go through these emotions. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to come in this like neat little box. And I think, yeah, you're right. I think like I am in that process, and I'm okay being in that process because I think initially I would want to be done with that process as soon as possible so I can start living my life. But that's once again with the intention of I need to be perfect, so I'm perceived a certain way, so I'm liked, so I'm loved because I don't have that within myself. I need that externally, right? So and that's the thing though, when clients come to me and they're like, tell me what to do, tell me what to do. I want to change overnight so I can wake up a completely different person tomorrow, right? That
Mm-hmm.
kind of anxiety that they bring in, I'm like, that's the exact opposite. Listen, like that you need, that's the exact opposite of what therapy is, and what you're actually going to learn here is to be okay with the process, to actually accept yourself even through the process, right? And not be so hung up on the end result because that end result is going to make you perfect. It's going to make you be liked by other people.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah. Again, it sounding like because I say similar thing with clients I see, and I'll say things like, well, I'm not here I'm not an advice giver, um, and whatever I would suggest would not necessarily be aligned with who you authentically are anyway. The idea is to get a better understanding of what your needs are and how you can best meet them within yourself so that you don't have to go and
Yeah.
seek externally. So I think of incongruence again, which I think is more of like a humanistic theory, part of humanistic theory, when
Mm-hmm.
you're not aligned authentically with self. But, remembering too, like in my early 20s when I first started therapy, I wouldn't have had a clue about what the next indicated step was for me about, I need someone to tell me what to do. I used to say that all the time. I need a mentor. I need someone to give me guidance. I had no idea what the heck was going on. So if my therapist had said to
Yeah.
me, you know, you get to decide for yourself what's best for you. You get to make that decision. That would have actually caused me more anxiety. I would have been like, what do you mean? I feel like I've already been figuring this out for
Right.
so long, by myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, good point that you brought up.
And I know you have a session, so we're gonna wrap this up. But let's talk again. Like I want to have if you're okay with it, I want to
Yeah,
meet
of
again and
course.
again talk more. But
Yes.
thank you so much for being here, and thank you for I do feel like I feel like I had therapy just now.
Oh, good.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
should pay you for
Oh
this.
my gosh. No, I'm so grateful to be here and be a part of this. I too, there's a part of me that likes, knows that I need to feel seen in order to increase or grow my sense of worth and feel confident in who I am. So, I really appreciate you
Yeah.
having me. So thanks.
Yeah, you're so yeah, you're such a beautiful person, and also I got to witness a little bit of what kind of therapist you are, right? Because yeah, we've been in supervision before. We've shared that space where you've talked about it, but I kind of haven't. I think I got a glimpse of how you conduct therapy, and all the more respect for you, Ashley. So,
Thank you,
thank
Niata. I
you.
appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you. I love that you're doing this. I've listened to one of the episodes so far. I want to hear more, so I'm happy to come back anytime and talk your ear off.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.